Christine. It's not about Marshall. It's not about Mike. It's not about any particular person, but it's about all of us who have contributed in some way
Yeah.
to get this thing rolling.
One of the things about me, when I got there in 1973, of course, I was the first person of color in the hangar and over in low-speed flight, and so that was interesting to be there. But the other interesting piece of being there was that you really didn't see black folks to get together. Really, a lot of the times I only saw black folks. I went to the cafeteria. That's a shame. Most of the times, or if they had something at the activity center, you might go there and see some other black folks. But it wasn't really until later on, as Mike talked. Well, actually, it was before the formation of NTA and some of those other things. There was a group of black folks that got together. Well, when Hickman and Bruce Outlaw, those kinds of guys got together as a group to try to empower themselves, to try to find, well, we're being discriminated against for sure, and how we're being looked at, how we've been listened to, and we need to have some kind of,
You were being ignored.
say again?
You were being ignored.
Ignored, yeah.
Pretty much.
And so I guess separation was one of the things that didn't allow us to be, recognize who we were.
I had a couple of interesting things. It was interesting. I had one. There were two things that really got to me when I first started working. I went to Boeing Aircraft Company one time, and I guess I was maybe like a couple of years in, and I walked into that plant, and I tell you, all the black people just stop. You know what I'm saying? And then you can see him, hey, look at that guy over there. He's one of those engineers. Look at him, pointing at him like you were in a zoo or something. And then the second incident I had was, and this happened like maybe a year, before I retired. I was facility manager over at Coast. And one day I was sitting in the control room, remember?
Yeah.
And there were two doors that you could come in, Mike know what I'm talking about. And I was sitting there, and I told Sam about this one time. I heard a guy on the outside saying, I'm looking for the facility manager, Marshall Rouse. Where's he at? And the technician said, well, he was right in the lab there. That guy, he came in the lab, and I was sitting there by the control center, and he looked at me, turned around, and walked out.
That's right.
Then, about 2 or 3 minutes later, he walked up to somebody else. He said, I'm looking for Marshall Rouse, facility man. Came in again. And the guy said, well, he was ready there. I don't know how you missed him. Looked at me, turned around, and walked out. Now, when I was younger, I would have got, you know what. But I was all this time. It was a slow day, and I said, I'm going to sit here and see how many times this white boy can come in this room looking for me. And then finally, I think the third or fourth time, I said, sir, can I help you? I said, what you need? He said, well, I'm looking for Marshall Rouse. I said, I'm Marshall Rouse. See what? I took the bag. And I mean, this is like, it was after 911.
That doesn't surprise me.
It was after 911. And it just goes to show you how much things change and how much they
stay the same.
remain the same.
Yeah.
The book Hidden Figures actually had an incident in the back, the extra part at the back, which I thought was Mary. But I talked to Gloria Champagne again last night. She said, after Mary became the Federal Women's Coordinator, she and Gloria Champagne got to be friends. And turns out that Mary eventually retired and Gloria took over. I didn't really know that until I read it again. But so the story is in there about a promotion board, and of course Gloria was in the promotion board, and she said that there was this white fellow there getting promoted over me, and I'm down here, and she says, well, I knew Christine had done more. She was telling me how that Mary had trained her to how to find out all this stuff. And she said she made some charts and went there and showed them the ratings and everything that went on, and that they were promoting the wrong person, and was responsible for me moving to that next level. I didn't know that till I read it in the book.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, my first, shall we say, outside of my branch or division happened when we were continuing to expand and develop our facilities in the high temperature materials laboratory. And so we had purchased, the branch had purchased what's called an arc jet, and it was for supersonic speeds. We already had those that were for subsonic speeds, so we were going to convert this one for supersonic speeds. And we developed a contract with a group called Thermodynamics out of Lebanon, New Hampshire. Small corporation. And so that was my project, shall we say. So Thermodynamics said, we're going to test the unit at our facility in Lebanon, New Hampshire. And they had to have it ready before the end of the year. This was 1963. So my supervisor came up to me and says, well, Sam, we're not going to send you, we're going to send this guy over here. And I said, well, he doesn't know anything about this whole thing. Well, but yeah, he's got a little more experience than you do, blah, blah, blah. I said, fine. Well, it just so happened that the white fellow and myself were very good friends, even though he was a graduate from Auburn University and, you know, spoke in that Alabama dialect. But anyway, we were very, and he says, well, Sam, why aren't you going? I said, Ronnie, you know, you have to ask Bob. So Bob sent him, and at any rate, the unit blew up, $98,000 worth, okay? So next thing I know, everybody was back and forth, well, what are we going to do, what are we going to do? So Thermodynamics said the only place we can test it now would be to go out to North American Aviation out in Los Angeles, California, because they had the facility that they could use and all of the electricity, et cetera. So we said, okay, so that came up right around Christmas time, but the trip was going to be between Christmas and New Year. So Bob came to Ronnie again and said, well, come on, we're going to send you out. He says, no, I'm not going. He says, I'm going home to Alabama for Christmas. So that meant they had to send me. So I did go on out to Los Angeles, and we had a excellent, successful test, brought the equipment back to NASA, landed here in Hampton New Year's Eve on the midnight, or what do they call it? Midnight special from Los Angeles. The red eye special. But you know, that was kind of the way we were treated. They substituted somebody else who they knew they weren't qualified. They knew they weren't qualified, but yet and still, now about 6, 7 months later, we were talking, and I asked Bob, I said, well, why didn't you just send me out to Lebanon, New Hampshire at first? He says, well, we just didn't think they would accept a Negro coming out to tell them how to run the test and do the acceptance. I said, well, you know, okay, if that's your reason, that's fine, but it cost us $98,000 in 1963 money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's interesting, Sam. At least you heard the word. Somebody told you why. So many folks were discriminated against and shown the disparity, but they never really got the words. They knew it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But they didn't hear the words.
Oh yeah. And see now, gotta understand this now. They weren't afraid to tell you why, because they were in total control. I mean, you didn't back then. Now you didn't have EEO, you didn't have AA, you didn't have Federal Women's Program. You had nothing. So you didn't have any recourse, or, you know, you could stand up and make noise, but that was about it. Mm-hmm. These people were in total control of your life and everybody else's life, all right, at that time. But we progressed since then, and just a quick story about Gloria Champagne, who worked with Mary under the Federal Women's Program. Her husband, Bob Champagne, yeah. He and I were good friends, and Gloria used to be the administrative assistant over in Acoustics and Noise Reduction Division under Homer Morgan. And Homer's organization came under Structures and Materials. We had the Structures Division, the Materials Division, and then Acoustics and Noise Reduction Division. Tell you a quick little story about Acoustics and Noise Reduction. We used to test the helicopters along with the AAMRDL, what was that, Army Air Mobility Research Laboratory. And so one of our things was to silence the battering of the helicopter blades. So if you recall, there was a TV series at that time out in Los Angeles where the helicopters would come in, and then all of a sudden they would go quiet, and you couldn't hear the beat of the propellers, I mean the rotors, okay? So we had the ANRD, Acoustics and Noise, ANRD, Acoustics and Noise Reduction Division, call out there to the movie studio and find out how did they do the silencing. The guy said, well, oh, that's easy, we just turn the sound off.
Boy. So were you involved with RSRA? That part of the helicopter work, research?
Not so much. Like I said, we did work with the Army Air Mobility. What was the young lady's name who who did the Tuskegee Airman thing? Used to work for the Army Air Mobility Research Laboratory. Huh? Yolanda. Yeah. Yolanda. Yeah. That was in that area. I didn't do hardly anything with helicopters except the fact that we were doing the noise.
Interesting that you mentioned Bob Champagne. I worked with him,
Okay.
and a lot of opportunities to fly with him. Of course, he's one of those first guys, X-15, I think, that flew.
Yeah.
You know, he and Chuck Yeager had the opportunity to fly that plane. But one of the things about Bob Champagne, he was one of the most disciplined pilots you would ever see. I mean, he was straight forward. He never deviated from checklists. He never deviated from the flight plan. Never did anything like that. One of the instances of flying with him, somebody was there, and they were, you know, in a helicopter or any airplane, you have to use the stick to hit the mic to talk. And for some reason, they had to say something during the time he was doing something very special, and they had reached and grabbed the stick and sort of moved it in a way that he wasn't expecting or didn't like. Got back and did a debrief, and Bob said, don't ever touch the controls when I'm flying the airplane. Don't, and just as serious as you'd ever see it in life. And so that was one of those things about him. He you know, was always very focused and very disciplined about what he was doing, so that's interesting too. So Mike, what about you? What kind of things?
Yeah, I was just listening to these two stories here. I was reminded of an incident, and I can't remember when it was, but I was sort of like maybe mid-career or something. But it was during the time when Langley still had the aircraft, our own aircraft. And we had flights going to D.C., you know, pretty much
That was a shuttle
every day.
that went back and forth.
Yeah, the shuttle,
Yeah.
right. And we had a couple of those smaller planes. And I can remember one time we went to my group, me and a couple of my coworkers and stuff, other engineers and maybe a technician or two. We used to go to D.C. quite a bit because they had a lot of trade shows at the Metro Center there. And I can remember one time we went up and so we were going to take the NASA plane to come back. And usually you get on there and, you know, it's just everybody just, you know, they try to keep it full. So you get on and it's just people from everywhere. They don't even have to be Langley employees. They just maybe come into Langley on a TDY or something like that. So we get to a national airport, and it's me and maybe 3 other guys that I work with, and we try to find out where the flight is. And as it turns out, we're going to be the only ones on the flight. And of course, I'm the only black in the group, right? And as it turns out, I was a high-ranking grade person in the group. So this person who was running the flights up there just could not believe that I was the high-ranking person for that flight coming back. They just couldn't believe it. It just was like, no, we got to wait. There's somebody else coming. Like, he couldn't take direction from me. Like, all I want you to do is just fly this thing and get me home safely. I'm not going to tell you anything to do.
Yeah.
But I was the high-ranking person on there, and so we get on the plane, and we had the whole plane to ourselves. And it's like, there's a cooler in the back, and there's some beer and wine in there, and it's like, well, we thirsty. So I went back there and got one, and a beer. And the guy had these looks like, this can't be true. This can't be happening.
Yeah,
But if I was white, they wouldn't have said anything.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Doesn't matter.
so I got maybe one, and next thing you know, all of us, we just having a nice little time coming back from DC flying. And when we got back here, we got off the plane, and I swear when I looked back at the plane as we were leaving the hangar, that guy was shaking his head, and it's like, you shaking your head? I mean, it's black people work here.
That's right.
All of us aren't, sweeping floors or whatever in your mind you think it is. And so that was my little experience at being the high, what do you call that? There's a term for it. But when you're the
HNIC.
highest grade person.
I want to HNIC, but that's the wrong way to
Well,
say that.
yeah, right.
That's not quite the right
Right.
one, but I know what you mean.
I can think of, I just thought of another similar thing. I can remember when Julian Earls, Julian from North State and whatnot, and he was senior level at Glenn or Lewis, probably still called Lewis back in the day. And we were having, I believe it was when we had the NTA conference in Norfolk or something like that. But anyway, Julian got the airplane and brought a group of people from Glenn down here to, he had the plane. He got the plane. Black folks just don't get the plane. But he brought that plane full of all those Lewis people down to the conference here. And man, that was just, to me, that was just, everybody was talking about Julian Earls got the NASA airplane. Not the prop job, but he had the jet, whatever.
The G4.
The G4, whatever it was. And it's like, man, they just like,
Yeah. Well, being in the hangar, I saw most of that happen. And whenever, the NASA 8 or that B-200 and the G1, the G4, when they came in, you always saw the people who were there. And so certainly you could see that most of the time, it didn't look like us
no, it didn't.
that were getting off the plane. So yeah, we saw a lot of that. So it's interesting, I guess, as...
Can I interrupt you one more time before you go?
Sure.
Another thing. You were in the hangar.
Yeah.
And so one of my earliest realizations at Langley was that the hangar was like a little special place, and not everybody worked there. But Gilbert Haynes had a group of y'all over there. Maybe you didn't work directly for him,
No.
but Gil had a group of black folks that worked in the hangar.
Well, he didn't necessarily have a group of black folks. He had a group of folks.
And were a higher percentage of black
Well, yeah,
folks
yeah,
than
he
you
did,
would
he
find
did, he
anywhere
did,
else
he did.
in one place at the center.
He did, yeah.
Other than the cafeteria, maybe. And
Yeah.
so he'd be a good person to talk, to interview, because he would have some,
Yeah, and I said earlier,
he
when,
looked out for a lot of people.
he did. And I've seen him, he used to have every second Saturday in December. And there's a website I have with pictures of this, of all retirees. It's called a NASA Hangar Get-Together.
Yeah.
People who come together who used to work there, and Gil has come back to those. We haven't had that for a couple of years now, but that's where I've seen him. He's still doing well. But yeah, there was a group of people, and some of you might know Bruce Outlaw
Yeah, Bruce.
was part of that group.
Yep, and the other guy, just a couple people.
Yeah.
Charles Howell.
Charles Howell, Joan Wright.
Joan Wright, yeah.
Because John White was there too, but John was a different direct. He was on different direct. John White, when he was still there, was there. But yeah, there was a group. There was a bunch of blacks in Gil's his group that there. And so this is off the record stuff, I guess. But I just what I want to do, if there's other things that you might share. And again, I'm going to this is, I don't know how I'll use all this, but I think it's good to have it. I don't know what you guys have done at Carver as far as your connection with Catherine or whatever. I don't know if there's something like that going on, if you've done that.
No.
I don't belong to this.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has done anything special like that.
Okay.
No, we had what year was that? We had the little,
We had a luncheon, we kind of kicked off that bench in downtown.
That's right.
Because we did
Dedicated
NTA
bench.
and everybody, we had a big special celebration of Catherine at Langley, at Carver.
Yeah.
And
And
then
that's,
she got the bench downtown.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
things
Yeah,
became a little bit
unveiling
more
and
active
everything,
after
yeah.
that.
I missed that thing last week where they had the groundbreaker and right with that same place. where-
Community center used to be.
Community center,
Yeah.
and now it's gonna be Mary Jackson
Mary
Community
Jackson.
Center.
And I read that somebody named a vehicle launch from Wallops after Catherine.
Yeah,
they call it Sputz. I've got it written
has
down.
it gone up yet? Was it this week or something?
Well, I read
It's
it in the
soon,
paper,
whatever,
I
yeah.
think.
There's a satellite that's named after her.
It's going up to the,
Where
I
was
was just
this
making
thing?
this week, but anyway, it's being named after her, yeah. Matter of fact, I guess the Mars,
Okay.
Hopefully it's on the ground.
coming down about
Well,
3 o'clock.
actually, Christine, this was in 2020. A satellite named after her, INSAT 17 on Mary. That was in November of 2020.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's one to be launched or just launched that is named after Catherine. It was in the paper this week.
I'm sorry, this is Mary Jackson. I'm sorry, this is Mary Jackson for this satellite. You said Catherine. That's a
Yeah, well, something was in the paper about Catherine. I
okay,
read
okay,
it, yeah.
okay. Yeah.
And of course, they had the IVV facility in West Virginia that was renamed for Catherine. So that's a NASA center, technically.
And there's some other interesting trivia about all three of those ladies. You know, of course, Katherine Johnson, West Virginia. And that's ironic that of course, Dorothy Vaughan was in somewhere out west, but she moved to West Virginia and then to Virginia. And of course, Mary being in Virginia the whole time. And so that kind of connection is interesting too for all
And
three
their
of them.
fathers, there was a connection between Dorothy Vaughan and Catherine in this big center where the people from D.C. used to go down to this big hotel in West Virginia. What was it? But anyway, it
The
was.
Greenbrier.
Huh?
The Greenbrier?
Maybe that was it, yeah.
The Greenbrier.
Yeah. So it's really ironic how all these things came together and to work the way they did.
And they were all teachers,
Yeah, they were all teachers.
and me included.
Yeah, okay.
You know, Catherine told me a story one time about before she accepted the job at NASA and how, I guess she was teaching down at Phoenix or whatever it was, or whatever, Huntington or something,
Okay.
wherever, I think it was Huntington. And they got in a bidding war with NASA to keep her there.
Was that right?
Because when Catherine said, I got this offer to go work, and the principal down there said, I'll give you more money to stay. And she said she thought about it, and then, with the space race and all this stuff, and then she said, well, I want to go do this other thing. But they actually the school outbid NASA to keep Catherine there. That's how great of she was teaching math and French and all these other things there.
I think this
She
is,
decided to come do
sorry.
NASA.
yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Sorry.
But this is good. But now with how I've learned, and we've all had more experience with the virtual platforms like Zoom,
Yeah.
getting a forum, a group of folks like this together on Zoom that you can maybe just talk more and have more, as you mentioned, or someone mentioned, having a larger crowd of folks together to talk about those experiences, I think is valuable, especially to encourage young people and to let people see. Hidden Figures, again, just brought to the attention disparities and neglect that had been shown to people of color. But there's a lot more than those three people. We all know that. There's a lot more. And I think it's good just to share and to learn. Because I learned, Marshall and I learned, and Alice learned about Dorothy Vaughan. We talk about the AME connections, and here she is, a woman, she's been featured. I've never heard that mentioned before. that she had an AME or scholarship to Wilberforce from the AME Church. So that's a big deal. I made that mean, but it means it's a big deal for us.
I'm trying to think, was she the one that taught me 4 times?
Well,
They used to have those
she
4
used to sit in the front of ACD, and if you had a question about programming anything, she was the one to ask.
Because you remember when you tried to figure out how to read those dumps?
She was the consultant on that.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting.
So you had the hanging chairs, right?
Oh, boy. Yeah. Well, look, that's pretty much, I guess, we're going to try to use whatever I can for our moments, and I, again, appreciate all of you stopping, coming to share.
My pleasure.
And I guess if there's anything else that I can,
The
I
lady
guess,
called me back, and I did the Zoom thing this morning before I came over here for the,
did you?
for the NASA thing.
I made 2 video tapes. I was just random talking about Catherine. Not Catherine, Mary. I just sent it to her last night. It was all late, and then I finally read the email. All the way down at the bottom, they had this list of questions that I was supposed to answer. I didn't answer nothing.
I didn't read mine on.
Well, I sent it to her, the links to her anyway, and she responded this morning and said, thank you, I don't know if they use it or not.
Well, I did a record. See, I don't know what happened, but I did the one back last March or sometime.
Yeah, it was like so long ago, yeah.
I don't know what happened, but I think what must have happened was I emailed it, and I think it was too big to get through. And then yesterday I did one, and I put it in a Dropbox, but they're not allowed to go into a Dropbox. And I might have put the wrong email address, and she tried to go into it with her phone. Then she said, well, let's just do a Zoom. So I did a Zoom at 10 o'clock this morning. And she asked me some questions. Because I guess I got to go back and read it. Because in fact, I read it so carelessly.
Yeah.
And then I looked at it yesterday, and I said, oh, no.
Yeah.
It's the 18th as it dropped. And I panicked and called. She said, no, that's all right. That's okay.
Well, if you hadn't called me yesterday, I would have completely forgotten about it. The deadline. It was like, oh, I was supposed to do that.
Did they ever hold a ceremony?
It's next Friday.
Next Friday, okay.
I'm supposed to go up there Monday for a walkthrough.
Okay.
But the NTA is the biggest thing I would talk about probably. And I used to stop by EEO and talk to Catherine. But I was on a RIF list too. I was on the 72. We had the Green Book reorganization. Do you remember that?
Kinda.
Courtright was here, but March Pedro got riffed on the first one in 70. But then about 2 years after that, this was all connected with paying for the Apollo and all of that, and there was, a lot of money was gone. And then about 2 years after that, 2 or 3 years after that, I was on the list, and I don't know if that was when I went to Becker or not, and said, well, why y'all, a black guy was bumping me out the gate.
Yeah.
And I think he was hired lower than I was, when I came in. I ended up going to Courtright and saying, why are a male and a female coming here with pretty much the same background assigned to such different places? The women are put in the computer pools,
Yeah.
and the men are put in engineering, and they do research, they give talks, they write papers, and they publish, and they get promoted.
Right.
And the women are not getting anything. And he looked at me and he says, nobody ever asked me that question before. I said, well, I'm asking you now. And do you know 2 weeks later, I got promoted and transferred to engineering.
well, that's an interesting point you bring up, Chris, because we talk about Mary taking that demotion in order to go to the federal women's program because she couldn't go any higher as
Yeah,
an
right,
engineer.
that's
Yeah.
So is that a big discussion that happened about a lot of other people as far as having to find themselves topped out and do something different to get
Well,
promoted?
they knew they weren't getting promoted lots of times. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the computers weren't going very
Well,
far.
you said RIF was a big concern.
But
I've
RIF
heard-
was where they actually go through, they set up all these boxes and they took, your grade and what you could do and everything, and you bounced people out if you had been there longer than they had been there, and things like that, and all of a sudden, somebody went out the gate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's what that was. And but Alvin Anderson was here then.
Yeah, Al
They recall that whole list.
So I remember RIF. It didn't really, for me, well, didn't affect me, but it was back, the Army people were the first to go. Back then, when they were riffing folks, the Army seemed to be the first people to go, and then they started to talk about NASA folks.
Well, you know, they had one when they were,
Technician realignment.
yeah, that's right.
Realignment.
And it was funny. You know, they did the whole thing. And you remember back in the late 70s or something, they had this cross-training thing
Yeah.
where secretaries could cross-train and become technicians and things. And they ran the RIF, then all of a sudden somebody looked at it and found out that one of the secretaries had cross-trained to technician, which gave her certain bumping rights. And they had to run the whole thing over. They had to run it over just because of some of those people.
But as Christine mentioned, as she said, Cartwright mentioned about money. So funding was a big reason for
Well,
that.
that was kind of the reason for NASA was at its top
Yeah.
enrollment of employees.
Yeah.
And so they had, you know, it was just expensive, and the Apollo program had been pretty
So
expensive.
what was that? Do you have any idea what that number was as far as complement for?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I think Langley had something like, I want to say 10,000 people.
Was it that many?
But most of those were contractors.
Contract.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
I
yeah.
came in 70,
Yeah.
when I came back in 74.
But I
most of
seem to
those were
remember a number like
contractors.
3,000, 3,500, 4,000 people.
Oh, they had come way down,
down
when
there.
they hit
When
3,500.
I
Okay.
got back in 74, it was down around 2,500 people,
Was it?
Yeah,
as I
Okay.
recall. But that, it's been so long ago.
yeah, they come way down. And in terms of civil service, I don't know,
Well, but they started contracting out everything.
contracting out, yeah.
And a lot of,
That was Reagan.
yeah, and then see a lot of research guys who did original research like I was doing and some of these guys were doing, they just started contracting that stuff out to different companies. And that was the big time of what they call IRD, Independent Research and Development. So they would give a contract, let's say you give a contract for $1,000, I'm just using a figure, $1,000 to a corporation, be big corporation or small, then they'd give them an extra like 2 to 10% of that, and they could spend that any way they want to in what they call independent research and development.
IRAD.
It was IRAD,
IRAD.
that's right, but it
IRAD.
had to have to do with the work they were doing for NASA, supposedly. I just thought it was a little 5% bonus.
Yeah. Okay, could I